These people broke into my house and claiming that they're the new owners. They get me out the property. The DA, the Attorney General, everyone is aware of what's going on with the property. Are they doing anything about it? Absolutely not. They are taking our properties rapidly. I took my father on a trip and I noticed that there was some things going on with my dad that was just a little strange. It wasn't his normal behaviors, kept repeating things. And we went to a restaurant. He asked to use his phone because he wanted to call his wife. And we was like, your wife? What do you mean? Who did you marry? What do you mean you got married? And he was like, yeah, I'm married. And I said, to who? When did you get married? Like, we had no idea. So he said, oh, her name is Karen. We was like, Karen? So we were like, okay. All right, something is terribly going on because we didn't know who this woman was. We didn't have no idea. We heard about him in Atlanta, having like family gatherings. We knew that there was some woman, but we didn't know to the fact that he had married her. So I noticed that he had like some lesions on his skin, and I was like, all right, I'll set up an appointment for him to go to the dermatologist. I'll fly down because, like I said, I work for the airline, so I'm able to fly back and forth. I'll go and I'll fly down and take him to the doctor and see about him. And at that point, from day one, when I decided to kind of assist and help with his medical and, fly to Atlanta, I found out at that point that this lady that he allegedly married had such a problem with it. So we took him, I had rented a car. We went to the dermatologist, and then I saw, she ended up going because she insisted. It was like, fine, and she basically was filling out all the documents for my dad at the doctor's, and I filmed it. Like, I sat on the side and filmed it, and I went back to my siblings, like, I think there's something wrong. And then it just was a series of events.
You think she's taking advantage of him?
It was absolutely.
Okay.
I saw it from day one. And so when I saw it from day one, I mentioned it to my siblings, like, listen, I think there's something going on here. I think that we need to be concerned about it. And then, we just basically was going from a medical perspective, like just taking him on series of, try to get doctor's visits to see. He had some previous health conditions. Was he, following up on his doctor's appointment, stuff like that. And everything was a pushback. So it became more alarming and more alarming because everything with this woman was a pushback, everything. So then we put like trackers on we did everything. We put trackers on the car. We would film, we would record anytime we was in the presence. So then we start informing all the agencies like, hey, there's something going on. We became power of attorneys. We saw the accounts. We saw money just being transfers from left to right. And then all these series of events, we ended up going to look for a conservator in a guardianship situation because no one was listening to us about what was going on.
What is she saying?
She just is like, no, that's not what happened. That's not what's happening, honey. She was causing a lot of, telling him that's not what's going on. And we're like, we're seeing the account and we're seeing the money being transferred. And the last event that occurred is I took him to the continent's doctor to get tested. And in the doctor's office, because I had the access to the account, I looked at it on the phone, $17,000 gone in the doctors are mandated reporters. So and if you look at the paperwork, it says it on the paperwork that the daughter's saying that $17,000 is removed out of his account. And that's what led us to the point where we're like, okay, we need to do something, about it. And that's when we went and applied for a guardianship and a conservatorship because we saw that we saw it the whole time, but nobody was doing anything about it. Everyone we went to, it was like on deaf ears. And so then COVID kind of came, we were, in the process of trying to go to court, petition the court, speak with, go in front of the go in front of the judge to, try to get, guardianship over our dad. And during court, they do a Liam report. They do a whole compiling evidence. It said that my sister and I would be a perfect fit for it. When we went to court, everything changed. So we're like, wait a minute. Because it lets you know pretty much what your outcome could possibly be. The judge changed instantly, like, no, we'll be a neutral party. We were like, what do you mean? My father has 5 kids. Why would you be a neutral party over us to make sure my father was taken care of. And they were like, oh, we're going to protect his money. Okay, what about his health? They didn't even do that for his health. They went right to DHS. Well, now, looking back, it was against the law. You're supposed to do the order of preference. They never do the order of preference and explain why, if I didn't pick this child, why I didn't pick this child. But we didn't know until now that that was done illegally. So then here we are again, a series of events with my dad into this guardianship and conservatorship.
And where is this? In Atlanta, Georgia?
Atlanta, Georgia
Okay.
was the conservator and guardianship.
I was going to say, I've, obviously I know a bunch of obviously criminals,
Yes.
but I would be locked up. And when someone would run, let's say, a Ponzi scheme or even just whatever, just straight fraud, these guys are just stealing.
Yes.
And they're doing something. They bring in
Could be a conservatorship.
well, it's a guy, somebody comes in and they have a different name for it, where the guy comes in and sells off everything.
Oh, yes.
Right.
That's what they do. They're attorneys. That's what they
Right.
are. They are.
It's an attorney.
It's an attorney.
But
It sells off everything.
But like the judge will appoint someone.
That's exactly
kind of
what
like he knows.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I know Todd. He's a good guy.
Yep.
And Todd ends up selling all your stuff,
Yep.
and you're like, okay, well,
Yep.
that vehicle's worth $20,000. Even if Todd's not great at it, he's just trying to get rid of the stuff as quick as possible. Maybe it sells for 15. It doesn't sell for 3
Right.
to your buddy, who then resells it for
That's exactly.
15 and then cuts you check back. I had a buddy who they liquidated. Is it a conservator? I forget what they call the guy, but anyway, the amount of fraud this guy stole in the process of it, he stole $2.5 million of all the money that was. So he's selling the stuff, and then he's charging these outrageous fees.
Yep.
And the person that has to sign off on the fees is the judge, who's his buddy.
That's exactly
Right.
what they're doing.
And so this guy, anyway, so he did it with this guy. So with my buddy who's in prison. So now you're ripping off the victims that my buddy just ripped off.
Right.
Now he's ripping them off.
Yep.
Again, in collusion with the judge. And what
Yep.
happened was this guy. So it wasn't, once that, like, he was complaining about it. But what's ultimately ended up happening was, like, 5 years into his sentence, that guy gets indicted by the FBI for like tax fraud, because the IRS comes in. And then he gets indicted for tax fraud.
Right,
And then
but not
come
what
to
he
find, no, he still, no, during the course of the whole thing, they realize you're stealing money, and now you're not even paying taxes on it.
Yep.
And he ends up going to prison for, I think he got like 12 years. Something. Actually, I want to say this guy himself. Lawyers don't do well when you give them sentences to go to prison. Anyway, but yeah, it's the same type of thing. It's the judge appointing a buddy.
Yep. They put a buddy.
It's the good old boy system.
Yeah, well, it's a RICO. It's really a RICO case. It really is a RICO, because they all conspired together to take these people. And that's what happened. We couldn't believe it.
So that's what was happening with this.
That's what happened with
okay.
my dad, like in real time. That's what happened to my dad. But not knowing to us, because you're going to the same people for help, and they do this to you. And we couldn't believe it. And so what they did was, this same attorney, he had a property in New York that they were having a litigation with this property, right? It was a relative that said that he was an heir to it, and we want to sell off this property. And so that's what the conservator did. The conservator had the plaintiff's attorney sign the documents in the court, file it in court, and act like they went to New York and literally filed, because you're supposed to do it in the state where the property is. They literally sold the property from Georgia, which you can't, because it's based on jurisdiction. But they filed the paperwork and made it look as if it was a legitimate sale. And then that's when these people came, when I showed you the video, how they just broke into my property and said that they were the new owners of the property. Initially,
Of your property?
of our property, yes.
Or your dad's property?
Well, it's my dad.
Okay.
It was my dad's property. We live in it. We were the POA over the property.
Okay.
But yes, that's what they did. They broke into the property saying that they are the actual owners of it. But there's a certain way that you can only acquire a property.
Right.
In an estate sale. You can't do a backdoor deal and sign off. And the conservator was in Georgia that signed off in Georgia for the property in New York.
Okay.
You can't do that.
Right.
Right. And that's what she did. She basically tried to liquidate all of his assets. And then we got a call not too long ago as well, because he had a property in New York and a property in Georgia. And we got a call from the claims department with the insurance. And we're like, hey, we need to, we need accommodations. We said, accommodations for who? They were like, we need to get accommodations for the property in Georgia. We were like, what do you mean accommodation? They were like, there was a fire in the property. We were like, when? Nobody, the guardian of conservatorship, they're not paying any of my father's bills, so his phone was off. But they have our numbers to call us. Nobody called us, informed them that his property had caught on fire in Georgia. So, so that's what they'll do. They'll take everything, liquidate it, burn it down, and just write it up and make it look like it was a legitimate claim. And it's not. This is what they're doing. They're stealing the properties from.
When was this?
This happened at the beginning of the year. The last thing that just occurred with the fire was it was just the beginning of the year in January.
Okay.
It was January, actually 24th. We got the call that there was a fire in the property, but the fire actually happened January 13th, and no one told us anything about it. It was the claims department that called us saying that they needed accommodations, and then my brother ended up going to the property when the adjusters went. When they went into the house, none of my father's alleged wife, none of her things were in there. She had already moved out. She was gone out of the property. Only things that was in the property was my father's things. So we start calling an investigation. We was like, they set this place on fire. But from my understanding, it's really hard to prove an arson case.
Right. Unless they use like gasoline
gas
or something right.
like that. So that's another thing. So they are aware that, if this conservative knows these plays, they know what to do and what not to do. They know what to do. Hey, just burn the house down. They're not going to do any extra investigation. I'm the conservative. They're going to listen to what I'm saying, and this is another way we can get the money. And that's exactly what they did as well.
So
at the property.
What happened with the property?
The property is boarded up right now. The property is boarded up, but they're acting as if we're in control over it. We make the decisions on the property when they haven't been doing anything for my father. My father's been in New York for over 15 months. They haven't gave him a dime, nothing for it, where I had to report it to Social Security and pension. Like, look, this is what's going on. They're not making sure he has any of the things that he needs.
Everybody needs a good pair of jeans. What I like about the Perfect Jean is that the moment you put them on, they feel like sweatpants. They don't ever pinch or bind up. As a matter of fact, they're super stretchy. There's never any point where you feel like they're binding up on you or they're tight or they pinch you or anything like that. They're comfortable in pretty much any position that you sit in. They're really great. They're comfortable and they look great. Normally, a good pair of jeans costs anywhere between $150 to $200, but the Perfect Jeans are reasonably priced at $79.99. For a limited time, our listeners get 15% off their first order plus free shipping at theperfectjean.nyc or Google The Perfect Jean and use promo code COX15 for 15% off. That's 15% off for new customers at theperfectjean.nyc with promo code COX15. Please support our channel and tell them we sent you. F your khakis. Get the Perfect Jeans. Have you tried to hire an attorney to?
Well, I looked at a couple of attorneys, but like I got in a situation with an attorney. So I'm really kind of, really combing through anyone that could really help us and help us legitimately, because I had an attorney and she didn't do anything to support and help us in the situation. Even order preference, that was against the law, and they were able to do it. So a lot of these lawyers, the conservatives are lawyer. They're doing things under the color of law.
Right. They're working with each other.
They're working with each other. So it's really, really hard to figure out who's really here to help and who's not. They're doing a lot of backdoor deals. And so that's what led me to really working against the deed theft situation, because here it is. These people broke into my house twice and claiming that they're the new owners, and they was trying to do a self-eviction to get me out the property.
I was going to say, you still have to evict someone. I was thinking breaking your house, like you still have to evict someone. You still have to go through an eviction process. I'm living in the house.
Right. You do have to go through the eviction process, but what they were trying to do was gain access to it immediately. Because what I really believe is that they really didn't sell the property. What they did was they administratively done it, where they made it look like it was an actual sale, meaning it's recorded on the property. And then what they were going to do was gain access to the property, start working on the property, call one of their buddies in and say, look, I got this property for 4.2 or 3.2. It has 2 million in equity, and then get it from the back end and pay everybody off. That's what I really believe, that's what I think they've done. But, I'm not 100% sure, but that's what I believe, that's how that's what they do, because that's why they want to gain access to the property. They gain access to the property, they can start doing the construction work, start, fixing it up, doing whatever it is to get,
But
some investor.
They have to get you out.
They have to get me out, but they could, they could work around me. If they have certain access to it, they can work on certain floors. They can bring their people in and say, hey, look at this property. It has 2 million in equity. It has 3 million in equity. So they don't care. They'll walk, they didn't stop their process. And in the process, when I went to court in all these processes, they know that the courts know, the judge, because I'm going in front of the judge know that that's not a legitimate sale. You cannot, if a person has a conservator, you cannot do a backdoor deal. You have to go through the courts. There has to be a petition in order to grant the sale where the property is located, and it never happened.
So what is it when you go in front of the judge and you've explained this to them? What are they saying?
Oh, they just act like, they let when this case, they let the attorney read what the petition said in the state of Georgia. And the judge was like, well, there's the information. That says the state of Georgia. It doesn't render in New York. It's not the proper jurisdiction.
Right.
It has to be where the property is located. But because it had Georgia and because it came from a court, and she feels like I'm probably not knowledgeable enough to know it, it's like, well, we're just going to let it fly. And it's like, no, this is illegal.
So at this point, I mean, you're still working with this. You're still working on this.
Yes. I end up forming a coalition. Yes, I'm still constantly working on it because there's so many people like me that have the same stories. We compound information where it's the same judges, it's the same lawyers, it's the same people that's doing the same thing. So now we realize it's a problem. The referees' deeds, they're saying that they're certified, and it's not. We see in the same exact pattern, but it's continuously happening.
Well, I think also a lot of these judges see the same lawyers over and over again. So if you've been seeing this lawyer for 10 years and you've never really had any problems with him, so if he comes in front of you one day, it's just like the normal. He knows what he's doing. He's doing this. This is what he does. It's not a problem. He's always been legit, and the lawyer may or may not even. I'm just saying, I don't know about your case, this case in general, but I know that there was an article that I had read about a lawyer. It wasn't even a lawyer. There was a guy in New York who was finding elderly people that had homes that had a ton of equity in them. Mm-hmm. And maybe they were occupied or they were leasing. Their houses were, vacant or being rented. Or maybe they were even occupied, because in the article, they talked about a woman who lost her house. He was all in her, these are people in their 80s.
Right.
And he would go, and some of these people, most of these houses had been paid off. They didn't even have a mortgage.
Right, like us. We had no mortgage, no nothing, paid off.
What this guy would do is go and he would place a mortgage on the property.
Yep.
And then after 3 or 4 months, he would go to a lawyer and say, hey, I need to foreclose on this property. I lent this person $800,000. Yep. And they would say, well, do you have the documents? And he would show them a closing statement, signed documents from the owner, everything.
Yep.
And then which that signed document, I could get your signature off of any number of documents that are in public records.
Right.
He'd sign it. He'd get it. A notary would notarize it, right? Even though it's probably a fake notary stamp, or it's just somebody that's in on it.
Right.
So then he gives this to a legitimate lawyer. That lawyer then starts the process. He has a process server go, knock on the door, file it. So you got an 85-year-old woman or a 80-year-old man, somebody says, hey, you've been served. They get it. They say, oh, yeah, okay. And they look at it. A lot of times they don't have anybody that can help them understand what's going on. And one thing, they say they're foreclosing on the property because of my mortgage. I don't have a mortgage.
Right.
This is a mistake.
It can't be me.
So they ignore it. Or maybe the process server says he served them and didn't.
Right.
The point is that then they get a letter in the mail. You need to show up for court. They don't show up for court. Or if they do show up, you've got a lawyer who knows exactly what to say. And you're sitting there, that you've got this 80-year-old man going, I didn't borrow any money.
That's right.
And the lawyer for the mortgage company or the guy who's foreclosing, he says, Your Honor, Mr. So-and-so, Mr. Johnson borrowed $800,000. He's never made one payment.
Yeah.
We have, here's the closing statement. Here's proof of the wire. And keep in mind, the lawyer thinks all this is legit.
Yeah.
Because he was given the documents by the fraudster.
That's right.
So he's now leveraging his good name with this judge, saying all these documents are legit.
Yeah.
They wired the money. They have a closing.
They gave it to him.
And all he can say is,
I
in
did.
his little old man frail voice,
That's right.
Your Honor, I didn't. I don't know what he's talking about. And it's like, come on, Your
Yeah.
Honor, he owns a $4 million piece of property.
He did
borrowed
that.
$800,000.
Yeah.
I don't know what he did with the money, but he's never made a payment. And so they go, okay, we're going to, and next thing you know, they own the house.
That's right.
And they're throwing the guy that owns out.
It's every day. It's happening every day in our community.
Keep in mind, even if he knows, even if this older person knows, or has a son or daughter that can help, that son or daughter has to scrape together 30 or 40 grand for an attorney.
Right. That's
and it's
right.
like, I work at Walmart. I don't have 40 grand for
an attorney. Or I have my own
attorney.
family in my own house,
Right.
my own responsibility. And that's how they're getting us, because they know the average person that age, their family is, their family's tied up helping. They can't help them.
Right.
And then they end up homeless. It's when I say it's happening in rapid rates. And these speculators, they form these LLCs. Nobody know exactly who they are. And they walk it right on through, all the way up into housing court. Like literally, I'm in housing court, like with paperwork in housing court, like waiting to go to housing court. And I didn't even appeal any of my cases because, the attorney general is aware of it. The DA, the attorney general, everyone is aware of what's going on with the property. Are they doing anything about it? Absolutely not. They're not doing anything about it, but they're all aware of it.
So are people contacting you now saying, hey, this is happening to me, and they're asking for your help?
Well, there's some people that has been contacting me, and then some of us, we kind of all just form together. It's like initially they'll come and say, this happened to me. A lot of people, I know people that 20 years have been dealing with this. But people kind of will call me, and then we'll meet at different rallies, different events that the city has put together, because all of them have these deed theft prevention classes. And we're like, how do you have all these deed theft preventions and you're not doing anything to help us? There's the funding that they said is available. There is no funding. There is no money. They'll say go to these nonprofit organizations. The nonprofit organizations is complaining because they're not getting paid. So it's almost like it's like a smoke and mirror that they're giving the people. And so now we're at the point where we're asking for a launch in an investigation and really see what is really going on, why we're not getting the help that we need. Even the attorneys, we compile evidence on attorneys, and we have a group of attorneys not to use. We may have like one attorney and is skeptical out of about 50 attorneys not to use. So it's almost where we're like maybe using paralegals to kind of, type up our paperwork and get it presented into the court just to stop a lot of the bleed. But no one is listening at all. No one is listening. And they are taking our properties like rapidly.
Is there a specific person? I mean, is there an organization or anybody that you've targeted that you can tell that this is a pattern?
A lot of there are businesses, so it's a lot of LLCs. A lot of the Orthodox Jews, I know a lot of people say when we say that they were like, oh, you're anti-Semitic, but they were like, these are the people that's doing it. And in our group, that's all that's been doing it to us. And so when we say it, the first thing they say, oh, you guys are anti-Semitic, but this is what's happening in our community, and you're not addressing it. If it's a black on black crime, it's listed as a black on black crime. We're not like, oh, you're targeting us and saying, calling, all black people criminals. No, but these are the people that's doing this to us, and they don't want to address it. They don't want to talk about it because then they're saying we're anti-Semitic. But these are the ones that, this is who's been doing this to us, literally coming in and locking us out of our properties. A lot of people are getting locked up behind it because when they go to the property, they're saying, hey, they're squatters. They don't own it. There's women that is in our coalition that own the property. They're in their property. They come and they present and they say they're squatters, and they're locking them up for trespassing. They're locked up for like 2 to 3 days. They go inside and remove everything out their property. So now they can't go back to the property because they're considered squatters, and so now they have to fight the criminal case.
They have what do they call it? A no trespassing or a warrant or whatever. What do they put on?
Yeah, a trespassing.
Yeah, trespassing.
So now they can't go to the property.
If they're there, they'll just arrest them.
They'll arrest them. So they can't go there, and then these speculators are there, and they're starting the construction on their property. So they're out there, and then now they have to fight their cases for the criminal aspect of it as well, on top of fight their cases to try to get their property back. So it's like it's.
Where are these corporations that the LLCs? Where are they all? Are they all filed in the same state? Or are they filed in New York? Or are they filed in another state?
I've seen New York. That's what most of them. I think it's New York. It's an LLC in New York. I don't think it's. I mean, it could be in other states.
So if you had a corporation, right? Like I changed the corporate name of my company several times, right? So that they didn't connect it with me. So if I were doing this, then, which I'm not, by the way,
right.
But if I were doing this, then I would start a corporation in a state where it was difficult to find out who owned that corporation. Because if you go to Delaware or Nevada, or then they can look and say, yeah, this was opened, and there's a lawyer that is in charge with receiving the paperwork and everything. We know who this lawyer is.
Right.
But the lawyer, if they said, hey, if you called up and said, hey, who owns this corporation? He'd be like, nah, it's a client. It's a lawyer client privilege or attorney client privilege. I can't tell you that. And unless they got a subpoena, I don't think that they would ever give it up. So that way that person could incorporate multiple lenders. You can incorporate a lender. I can say I'm a lender. I could open up a lending institution. I don't have to have any licensing as long as I'm lending my own money. And let's face it, these people aren't lending any money at all anyway.
No.
But, just in general, if it's a trust or whatever, they don't need to be licensed. So it could be the same person behind all these. If it's from New York though, and you looked up those LLCs in New York, I'm pretty sure New York probably you can tell who opened that company.
Yes.
So,
the registered agency.
Right.
Agent, yes.
Well, the registered agent could be the same attorney, because just could be an attorney, right?
That's true.
Or so I'm wondering, like, if you can figure out, is it like the same address is used over and over again? Is it the same? You know what I'm saying? Like, so you can connect it.
Well, you're right. And in my case, there initially, when, like I said, we were in litigation for 4 years, there was a contract signed because a relative claimed that he had ownership of the property. You can't sell a half of a house. You can't sell your portion of a property. But that's what he did with these guys called the Embalo brothers. Now, you Google them. They're all over all over New York about stealing portions of properties of families, right? And so that's who was on our property initially, was the Embalo brothers. So that was who had the contract. And then when they did the actual sale in the beginning of 2023, it was a 227 group that claimed to be the owners. But when we looked at the addresses were the same. So as you were saying, like, do they change? well, from our understanding and what we found out, there's still two different organizations, but the speculators that they do it is all the same. They use the same address. It's probably like a group of friends. You know what I mean? That
Yeah, it's a group of guys. If
right.
it's 5 guys together and we're
Right.
doing this, hey, this time, Colby, we're gonna record the ABC lending or ABC Trust in your name.
Right.
Oh, okay. And then when he's filling out the paperwork, he's like, I don't want this coming to my house. I'll have it come here and come to the same office. Well, we're in the same office. Then 6 months later, we're doing another one. Hey, we're gonna do the XYZ Corporation, but I'll do it in my name. And I don't want that corporate paperwork coming to my house. So I'm going to have it come here. So it ends up being like, you're like, that's the same office though. It's just a bunch of guys in the same office.
Yeah.
They're just
circling it around. And that's exactly what happened. And that's what I told the district attorney.
All right.
I showed them, I said, look, the addresses are the same. There's some similarities. I mean, they're LLCs, but the address is the same. And those are the things that I did, because that's what happens. You start compiling information and evidence and you try to connect the dots. Or you have to really connect the dots on your own to see the similarities. And that's what we were presenting to the DA's office. We would send it to, the Attorney General's office. And they're saying, hey, we're doing an investigation. There was a new law that was in place July 19th, 2023 that protects you. If there's any discrepancies with the property, nothing can be done until it's solved. So I fell in that bracket. That time frame. I got a letter in the mail saying, hey, everything was dismissed in your case. And I'm like, in the courts, because I brought it, up in court. I let them know, hey, the DA's looking at it. The Attorney General's looking at it. There's fraud in this case. Okay. It came right back. It came right back as if. And I don't really think that the judge are the ones that signing off on it. In Brooklyn, there's administrative. And I think it's the administrative that signs off on these properties. I don't think it's the judge. I don't think it's the judge that's actually making the decisions. I think it is like administrative person behind the judge that makes these decisions. I don't even think it's the attorney clerk.
And the judge is signing off, because the judge is going to have to sign the final order. Yeah.
But I think the person that makes I think it's supposed to be the judge, but I don't think so. I don't believe that it's a judge that's making these decisions.
Well, I know some judges that made some pretty bad decisions.
That too.
So
Don't put it past them.
I don't want to rule that out.
No, not totally rule it. You're absolutely right. Not totally rule it out. But the reason why I kind of say that, I think that there's someone else behind it, and it could be a judge. I started my TikTok, and there was a young lady that found me on TikTok.
I'm all about productivity, feeling energized, and staying strong, no matter how old I get. But let's face it, aging can slow you down. That's why I started taking Qualia Senolytic. As we get older, our bodies pick up these things called senescent cells, or zombie cells, that can make you feel stiff, tired, and achy. These cells take up space and suck nutrients from the healthy cells we need. But that's where Qualia Senolytic can help. Qualia Senolytics help remove those dead cells so the healthy ones can thrive. It's like hitting the reset button on your body. Qualia Senolytics is vegan, non-GMO, gluten-free, and the ingredients are all about working together to support your health. The best part is you only have to take it 2 days a month, and they have a 100-day money-back guarantee. So if you want to feel younger and boost your energy, go to qualialife.com/true and get up to 50% off. Use code TRUE for an extra 15% off your order. Try it risk-free with a 100-day money-back guarantee. Trust me, your future self will thank you. And thank you to Qualia for sponsoring today's episode.
And she basically, my case, you can't look up my case like online. You have to go to the courthouse and get the information, because it was an e-filing, right? And she came to me and she was like, I can help you get some money out of this deal. And I'm like, what deal? Like, What deal are you talking about? Your property. She's like, I can help you get about $70,000-$80,000. I was like, listen, this our family home. We over 60 years. What are you talking about? Like, there's no other option. Like, we're staying in our property. She was like, listen, you're not going to get this property. She was like, this is a lot bigger than you think it is. And I was like, what are you talking about? This lady came from nowhere. She was just showing me my documents. I was like, how did this lady get this information? So one day I so happened to be out and about, and I was with my dad, and she was like, Carmella. And I was like, yeah. She was like, I was the one that was inboxing you on TikTok. And I was like, really? She was like, yeah. You remember I was telling you about the property, and I was telling you that,
And she just happened to bump into you?
And she just so happened to bump into me, which I thought was strange.
That's not normal.
Which is not normal. And I said, really? She pulled it up on her phone, all the documents of what I submitted, my order to the courts. And she was like, literally told me around January or February, they're going to rule on your case. You're not going to win your case. I'm letting you know now. And I looked at her like, you're crazy. Like, who are you, lady? She's like, I just want you to know I was a real person, and I'm here to tell you. And exactly what she stated is exactly what happened.
You think that it's possible that these guys sent her there to say, look, we'll give you 80 grand, go away. Like, sign some paperwork and go away. Like, you're not going to end up with...
Yeah. Definitely somebody is definitely... Like I said, when they broke into my house, they were sitting in front of the doors waiting to see when we left out the house. They sit there and monitor you and watch you and see who's coming in and out the house. And when it's free, they ran into the property. So I'm quite sure the same thing with, they find people to contact us and say, hey, you're not going to get your property back. This is what you need to do. So in that essence, then they all are connected. And that's what I'm basically saying. They're all connected for someone to come out of nowhere and be like, hey, which we know it's not out of nowhere, and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, and this is not going to work in your favor. How are you so sure on that gamble? Unless you know something in the inside that I don't know. And then when I started researching the courts, I realized that there's maybe a chief, judge, but it's just administrative that runs the courts. It's just a regular administrative people that run their courts. So if the administrative people know, hey, these are these properties here, we'll make sure it doesn't rule in their favor. And then as administrator, and I know people that can get the property.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was thinking to myself, well, if these guys do get control of the property, they get ownership of it, and they sell it, if they were to sell the property, like I'm not really understanding how, like whatever money they've put up to get themselves into a position to be on title, like let's say they put up $1 million and they sell the property for anything over that, then that money should go to the original owners. The problem is, I was thinking if I was them and I had $1 million on the property and I sold it, I'd make sure I didn't sell it for more than what I was owed. Right. And if I did, if he sold it for, I just sell it to somebody who I know, of course. Mm-hmm. So I'd sell it to some guy. You owe me $1 million. I'd sell it for, 1 point whatever and change, and you'd end up getting $30,000. And all that paperwork would look legit. And then, of course, that person ends up, who's probably sitting in the desk over there. You know what I'm saying? That person puts it puts it up for sale, and he sells it for $3.5 million, and then we all split that money.
Right.
But I was thinking, have you thought about going to like a reporter or anybody and kind of explain that?
Yes, I have several articles that, I did, news press. I did rallies in front of my house that wrote the whole details. Our local papers that's been around for years wrote in details articles about what has transpired with the properties, but it's all falling on deaf ears.
What about like a rep? Isn't there a rep? Who's the rep for your district?
District, all of them are aware of it. They were in front of my door rallying and talking about the subject, and let's go back to legislating and put different laws in place. But what's the sense of putting laws if they're not being enforced? They're not being enforced at all. There's all laws in place. They know it. It's not being, we are totally being violated with this deed theft. It's like no one's listening to us. We'll call in, Hakeem Jeffries and Letitia James had a whole town meeting. We're calling in like, hey, we're having deed theft. Oh yeah, the legislators, the laws in place, this. But no one is doing nothing. And people, like you say, you asking me, well, did you do all these things? We've done all these things. And that's why I really wanted an investigation to really see really what's going on behind this. Because it's been going on for years.
I wonder.
Years. It's been going on for years.
But the stuff that you know of is just happening in your state. Is that correct?
Well, it's the same thing. Well, it's just group of us.
Do you have other people that are involved that are in other states that this is happening to?
Everyone, as far as the deed theft, it's in our state directly. But it's like with the conservatorship and the guardianship situation. I know people in other states, the same thing that happening with the guardian and conservatorship. So it's because I have two different cases kind of going. I got the guardianship and the conservatorship, and then I also have like the deed theft aspect of it. But if you look at the guardianship and the conservatorship, that the group that I formed in that aspect, the same thing is happening. They're taking,
that was in Georgia. So you have one in Georgia, and so you do have a connection between two different states.
Two different states.
I'm trying to think of how do you get it out of these idiots in the state. How do you get it out of their hands? Because they're clearly incompetent, right? They're ineffective. They can't seem to do anything. But if you were able to go to the FBI,
that's the only way you could do it,
right? Because the FBI
investigation. That's how you have to do it, and that's where I'm at now.
So you have to have two different states.
Yeah, I have to go to the Fed. Literally, that's why I am with going to the feds and having the feds to cross jurisdictional lines in order to show that this is what's going on. But because it's the same thing. When I speak with my coalition in Georgia, they liquidating. Listen, the same conservator, she had one young man. His parents, his mother. It was not his parents. His mother died without a will. They went to become the administrator over his estate, over his mother's estate. I think it's not mandatory for you to post a bond. They didn't post a bond. The same conservator that I had, she came in, became the administrator over the estate without their due process, without them even knowing, and then started eviction to evict him out of his mother's property. In the eviction, in the paperwork, she scratched out the deputy clerk of the county and used her notary. So you can't, that's illegal. You can't take the court's the court's paperwork and cross out and put your notary, and then filed it in court and started the process to evict him. And so he submitted all the documents and was in front of the judge saying, hey, this is what this attorney, the guardian, this attorney, because for him, she's just an attorney, this is what this attorney illegally did. And then the judge is like, okay, it may be illegal, but it's a criminal case. You're in the wrong jurisdiction, which he was in the right jurisdiction. But they told him he was in the wrong jurisdiction. You have to take this to criminal. Okay. So now he has to do a criminal case in it. But
but they're doing whatever they want. It's the wild west.
It's the wild west. And the judge is really, he's kind of protecting them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
the judges are all attorneys too.
They're all attorneys too. So they're good. Right. They're officers of the court. So they're protecting them. They're like, okay, well, if you're saying you could prove this, now you got to go to criminal court. And that's the jurisdiction.
My brother-in-law was an attorney. And he was saying that these guys would go to different, organizations that are all members of attorneys. And he's like, there's this one group of attorneys that he's like, literally like they're ostracized. Like nobody talks to them. They're off by their own. Like nobody. And he said, because they sue other attorneys. And he's like, and they're extremely busy. He goes, because you can't find an attorney.
You can't sue another attorney.
Like they just don't want to do it. They don't want anything to do with it.
Wow, you're absolutely right.
And I don't necessarily know for sure if that's because they're kind of looking out for each other, which it probably is.
Are.
But I think that's probably part of it. I also think it's because suing another attorney, that attorney can fight you and drag it out. It's like it's going to be a ton of paperwork because he's also an attorney.
He knows what
and
to
he's
do.
going to right. He'll drag it out. He's going to fight tooth and nail because I'm trying to sue him. What I was thinking was, so there is a private investigator in Florida. The problem is he's in Florida.
Right.
In Florida, his name is Tom Simon, and he owns Tom Simon Investigative. I don't know what is it. Investigations.
I think it's Tom Simon Investigates.
Investigates.
Yeah.
Investigates. Okay.
That's his Instagram name.
Oh, is it?
He's a private investigator, a retired FBI agent.
Retired. So he did 26 years in the FBI and retired, and opened this thing. And what he does is when people aren't getting anywhere, what he'll does is he'll look at a case. People go to him, and he looks at the case. And I mean, obviously, he charges.
Right.
He looks at the case, and then, I mean, he'll talk to you on the phone for nothing. You know, he'll talk to you and say, "What's going on?" You know, let me see if you even, because if he talks to you on the phone, after you tell the whole story, he'll be like, "Okay, I'm sorry, that's just not federal." Like there's nothing, because here's what, he doesn't do this all the time. Obviously, he does regular investigations.
Yes.
But one of the things he'll do is, if he thinks something could be brought to the FBI, he'll look at the whole case. He'll put the case together so that these guys don't have to do all that work.
Right.
So that way he then goes to them and says, "Here's what's happening."
Right.
Here's, you know, and he can go, okay, it's like the they call them FBI 302s, where it's like a case summary, page by page. So you can look at it chronologically. On this day, this happened. Boom. This day, this, and he tells you what laws are being broken, what they did, and who was involved, the whole thing. It's what they want to know.
Yep.
And that way, it's like they can look at almost like looking at a picture book.
Exactly.
Okay, I can see, you know, Johnny ran up the hill.
Yep.
Jill was at the top of the hill. Johnny ran down the
That's how you
hill.
have to present it.
Jill's dead. You know what I'm saying? Like he can,
Yep.
and he'll lay it out, and then he'll take it and go into the local FBI. He'll schedule an appointment, go into the FBI office, and say, "Look, 26 years, bro."
That's what's needed.
And lay it all out for them so that they're
right.
like, "Okay, you're right. I think this is a case."
That's right.
As opposed to you calling, rambling on for 20
right,
minutes.
with
and
a
they're like,
grievance, saying that like, "What are you talking about, man?"
because you sound like sour grapes.
Right.
Oh, she's
right.
just upset because something didn't go right. They don't quite know what's doing right.
Listen, and even with case law, because I do have a little understanding, and even with case law, they'll say that to me as well when I present it. Listen, I went to the DA, and I had on Valentine's Day, I had a meeting with you know, one of the representatives for the AG's office, and she said, "Well, you're just upset with the outcome?" I'm like, "No, I'm not upset with the outcome. This is the law. You are an attorney. You know about jurisdiction. They cannot sell a property from Georgia and New York."
Right.
That, you know what I mean? If you look at the title of the property, there's about 5 different notaries from all over.
Well, it's like a judge foreclosing in New York, foreclosing on a property in Florida. It's
Exactly.
like your jurisdiction stops
at the county line.
Exactly, at that line. You don't have the right. If you say, "Hey, I'm foreclosing on this property in Florida," even if you said, "Look, the lender is in New York, and the lender lent money to this in Florida, and these people didn't pay, and then that lender needs to go to Florida and start the process of foreclosing in that county." In the county, and start the process, and then a judge in that county in Florida needs to sign off on every step of the way, and then he determines, yes, we're going to foreclose. You can't do that from New York.
Listen, and they know that,
Right?
and they know that, but they like, it's almost like, "But do you know it?" And it's like, it's a constant going back and forth. It's clear as day.
Yeah.
It's clear once all this smoke goes, and it's clear as day. And guess what? I have not heard back from the Attorney General with giving them the facts and the information that you know. Nothing. So what are you going to tell me? I'm busy. I've been working. I didn't get a chance. We're working on this. We're working on it. No, they don't do anything. They don't do anything. So that's why I said an investigation will show all of that. So then you can't give the smoke and mirrors anymore. That's the facts.
Can you imagine how terrified these guys would be? The FBI showed up and knocked on the door and said, "Hey,
that's what's needed.
Need to talk to Mr. So-and-so. He apparently opened up these 3 corporations.
Yes.
There's a group of you guys working in tangent to to foreclose on properties that you
Yep.
don't actually own or that you're trying to buy an interest in and then foreclosing on.
Yep.
And then
Yeah, I have I have a few questions just to clarify. I know you covered it, but I just kind of want to clarify because if I'm a little confused, maybe some audience is confused.
Okay.
Is the Georgia property and the New York property, are those linked at all, or are those kind of two separate things?
The only way they're linked is by the ownership. The ownership
Okay.
of the property is the linkage, but they're in two different states. So New York, my dad has a property in New York, and my dad had a property in Georgia as well. So it's two different properties.
Okay.
yeah,
Yes.
but that's not that's not a link.
Okay.
You're just saying it happens to be my father happens to own
two properties. That's it. Yes.
That's irrelevant.
That's
so,
yes.
So the kind of the storyline with the wife and the deed theft in New York are two separate type of things.
Well, I mean, do you think she helped lead to
No,
this?
no,
These
she
are
didn't
two-
help lead to it. It's two separate cases. It's just that the series of events that led
Yeah.
to it.
Okay.
It's definitely two separate cases.
So with the deed theft in New York, so from my understanding, it's your family home that you've lived in for hundreds of years, right?
Yes.
And then
No mortgage on it.
at some point, the ownership got dispersed to many family members.
They allegedly these family members said that they were heirs to the properties. Yes.
And then that's when the
They're not on title,
right.
yeah.
but they're just saying that the property's been in their
Right,
family
family,
for
and they-
So
been
they're
passed
saying-
down
so
through the
it's just-
generations.
Yeah, and so then the Amalo brothers, is that their name?
Embalo,
And
yes.
Balo brothers approach these people who saying this is our property, but they're not on the paperwork, and they give
Put
them
it- right.
whatever 500,000, $1 million for their
portion,
their
their
portion
portion of
of the
it.
property, and then they just take control of the whole entire property.
And then what they did,
They try to evict. They go in and evict everybody.
well,
or-
what happened was the Embalo brothers had the contract with that relative, and then I guess the Embalo brothers, they didn't want to deal with it, so they gave it to their buddies. They gave it to one of their friends, which would be the 227 group, and let them deal with it because they approached me on it. I didn't know who they were at the time, but they approached me on it on the property and basically was like, oh, we're working with the state of Georgia to get the property. And I was like, what are you talking about? And at that point I said, well, I'm planning on taking everyone in Georgia to federal court. And once he knew I mentioned federal court, he backed off of it. Later on, he's supposed to have backed off the deal and gave it to his friend. So that's what they did. They were all these people are working together. Even the courts in Georgia, everyone is working together because he stated to me in a lot of my videos, he stated that I'm working with Georgia to sell off the property.
so even though who's on the title, I guess, like does it?
Yeah, I'm. So who is on the title?
It would be my dad, Carmella Charrington.
Then how do they think that they have the legal ability to foreclose if they're not on the title? Did they just file a lien on the property?
No,
or
not a
something?
lien. What do you mean by who had to think that they had it?
Like, how are
access
they
to
going
it?
through the process of seizing the property? So
Because he has a conservator, so the conservator is acting for my father.
okay,
So she is
so
like
so the conservator started the foreclosure process.
It was
Not foreclosure, sorry, just to sell the property.
Well, no, before the conservative and guardianship, the initial relatives started a proceeding saying, "Hey, we have part owner of the property and we want to sell the property."
What paperwork did they have?
There was
saying-
nothing presented. Only thing they did was have an attorney draw up the paperwork and said that they have legal rights to the property.
but they're not on title.
Not on title, anything.
There's no lien on the property
There was
in their
no
name.
lien, no nothing, no ownership, nothing. They just presented it in court. So we're waiting and thinking we're going to go to court to show that this is not, they don't have ownership of the property. During that time, 2 of the plaintiffs died. When it was 4 of them totally, 2 of them died. When they died, the judge told them you had to have somebody over the state to represent them. So we're like waiting for this process. During that process, we were in Georgia fighting the conservator and the guardianship for my dad.
Okay.
Right. And so then they took over. So once they took over, we thought that they would continue fighting this the legality that was happening in the state of New York. They never did. Nobody didn't send, no paperwork was submitted in court. Nobody showed up. Nothing was done. So then it became alarming because it's like, well, you knew that if you're his conservator and you're representing Mr. Charrington, then you would represent him in court. Nothing was done. And then at that time, we saw that the Imbalos came in while we're still in court and did a contract with this relative that claimed to be the owner of the property. So then I'm calling saying, wait a minute, we're in a court case and they're selling portions of the property while we're in the court case. The sheriff's department was like, oh, you're still in the property. I mean, you're in court. When you go to court, you just let the courts know what's going on. So we're like, oh my goodness. All right. So then we're waiting to go to court. Never go to court. Never, nothing. All of a
They
sudden,
never notify you to go to court.
we never went because nobody showed up. Nobody submitted documents. Nothing ever happened. And then as we're waiting, like, okay, we know the dates. No one appears in court. January 13th, 2023, these alleged people came into the house and said they were the owners.
So what happened during the court proceedings? The judge, I thought you said the judge had signed off saying these people own the house.
That was afterwards. So so when the first initial lawsuit that they started, we were waiting, to submit documents to show that these people that claim that these relatives that said that they're owners are not owners. That first case never went in front of a judge at all. These people came in, said that we are the new owners of this property right now.
Does it say that in
No, there was no proof. Listen, I submitted, there was no administrator over the estate. I showed them everything.
What does the title say? Does the title say that they own the house?
No, it doesn't show anything. It shows up. What happened was this relative that claimed that he's an owner, his father came and tried to do a quick claim deed on the property.
Okay.
And that quick claim deed he did was actually legally, it was done wrong. But they present and say, hey, I am the actual owner. So we were waiting to show all these discrepancies in court, but they never went. It was never presented in front of a judge. We never went in front of a judge to say, hey, they're not the owners. This is the owners. This is the process. It never happened. What happened was they dismissed the case, the plaintiff and the defendant, this relative that said that he's the owner, my father's conservator, they dismissed the case. These new speculators came in and said that, hey, now we're the owners of the property. Literally came, put a note on the door, came in, ransacked the house and said, we're the new owners. And then at that point, I went to court, did a TRO, asked the judge, hey, stop this. I don't know what this is that just happened. We were in court for 4 years. We was waiting to go in front of you. No one ever appeared. Now these people are saying they're the owners. How is this possible? These people do not have legal rights. Went in front of the judge. Once again, they present. They come in front of the judge. The judge says, hey, here's these documents. They are the actual owner. They bought the property for $1.4 million. I'm like, no, they did not. We don't know these people. These people are, I mean, they're our relatives, but they don't have legal standing.
So they're not on title. They can't sign for the title.
No.
Your father is.
My father is.
So where was this closing?
Exactly. I have no idea. I don't know where the closing was. We don't know anything.
Is there a new deed in public
Right.
records?
There's a new deed in public records. And when you look at the new deeds, it's like maybe 10 people on the deed. And it looks like a whole bunch of heirs that signed off in different states. So you have a notary in Jersey. You have a notary in Maryland. You have a notary in Virginia. You have a notary in Georgia, all on the title. Which you can't do that as well.
Well, unless they were all on the original title. Like if your father had quit claim deeded it to 6 people, and then those 6 people sold the property and they notarized their name, but that's not what happened. You're saying
no,
okay,
that's not what happened.
So it went from your father to they just filed a new deed. with their names on
They
it.
filed a new, right. It went from my father to this relative that claimed that he was, his father was the owner. And he's the heir. It was his father. So it went from his name and my father's and said that, hey, these are all the heirs for this person that is deceased. These are all his heirs. And then my father's conservative side, my father's portion.
And so
And all
these new
these titles.
people have moved in. Are you guys?
No, we're still in the
Okay.
property. Yeah, we're still actually in the property.
I think the problem is the conservator signed for your father, but he signed it. He's in Georgia,
Right.
And he signed a deed for a property
in New York, which clearly is jurisdiction and it's clearly illegal. But when you mention it, because it's an attorney, it's almost like a blind eye.
You're saying he's the conservator.
Explain what that. What's
Okay.
a conservator? Like
So
he's representing him legally.
Yeah, the state for the state of Florida.
Yeah.
Let's say you live in the state of Florida, and you're not able to take care of your own
Yeah.
affairs
So he's
anymore.
making the decisions for me.
So the judge
Yeah.
says, I'm gonna put Matt Cox in. He's a conservative, or
Yeah.
let's say I'm gonna put Jack in charge. He's a lawyer and he does this for a living in Georgia. Well, his only jurisdiction is in Georgia for you, so he can only deal with the stuff that's in Georgia. And if in the what she's saying is that during the course of this whole thing, some relatives said, "Hey, we own a portion of this property in New York for Colby," right? And they went to the conservator in Georgia
Yeah.
and said, "We want to sell this property." At that point, he should have said, "Yeah, I can't sign off on that property. Like, it's not in my jurisdiction. It's not in Florida. Or I'm sorry, it's not in Georgia.
Yeah.
It's not in Georgia, so I can't do anything about that." Have I been saying Georgia the whole time? Or did I say
You've been going back and forth, but I get it.
But you're Georgia, Florida.
But this conservator, he was dealing with the property in Georgia, right? With the
Georgia.
wife, and then these people from New York reached out to him or wherever
Wherever
the
they're
deal
from.
was, and he just signed off.
And then he signed off to
on it.
sell the property in New York.
Right.
And what does he say? Like,
The conservative,
yeah.
the conservative is basically monitoring two properties, because he owns two properties. So one would be in New York and one would be in Georgia.
No, what's he saying?
What's he
why
saying? Like,
why did he sign
why
off
would
on
you
it?
do
Oh, we
that?
wouldn't know. Oh, it's confidential. I don't have to speak to you about anything. I work for my client. I don't have to tell you anything. That they don't tell you. That's their approach to get away with what they're doing.
Yeah,
Is the
and-
confidentiality aspect of it.
And with this family member who sold the house in New York,
Gone.
there's
Nobody
no
knows where he's
communication.
at. Nobody,
Yeah.
even with the DA tried to reach out to all the people that's on there, and she told me she could not get in touch with them. I was like, don't you think that's suspicious? These could be ghost people.
If you sleep hot at night, you know how disruptive that can be. Whether you're having trouble falling asleep, you're waking up sweating in the middle of the night, or all of the above, that's where Ghost Bed can help. As the makers of the coolest beds in the world, Ghost Bed is your go-to for cooling mattresses, cooling pillows, and cooling bedding. From their signature Ghost Ice fabric to patented technology that adjusts to your body's temperature, every Ghost Bed mattress is designed with cooling in mind. So whether you want a plusher mattress that cushions your shoulders and hips, or a firm option with exceptional support, your Ghost Bed will keep you cool and comfortable all night long. When you purchase a Ghost Bed mattress, your comfort is guaranteed. You can try out your mattress for 101 nights, risk-free, to make sure it's the right fit for you. Plus, they offer free shipping, and most items are shipped within 24 hours. If you're not sure which Ghost Bed is right for you, check out their mattress quiz. You'll answer a few questions and get a personalized recommendation. Even better, our listeners can get 50% off site-wide for a limited time. Just visit ghostbed.com/Cox and use the code COX at checkout. Again, that's ghostbed.com/Cox with the code COX at the checkout to save a whopping 50% off site-wide.
I literally don't know them. Like the four relatives that initially started the case, I know them. But all these different heirs and family members that are the children of them, we don't know them. And when she reached out, the DA said, I tried to contact these people. I couldn't get in touch with them. And I was like, well, you don't think that's alarming? That you can't get in touch with all these people that's named that's on the actual on the title of the property? Nobody. And then when I went back and looked at the conservator's information, it says Georgia. So no, but the property's in New York. How are you able to do? And they all know this.
And when they came to try to get you guys out of the house, you guys just like, we're not leaving. Like,
no, because you know your rights. You know, when you kind of have an idea of the law, you know your rights. You like it don't go like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, in this series of events, so many things could have happened. You know what I mean? Like someone could have literally got hurt because they came in there and they're like, we're the actual owners. Everyone is screaming, you know, carrying on, and we're like, and I'm just pretty much calm. Like, no, I don't know who these people are. And when you looked it up, when they went to Asterisk and looked at the county records, it showed them as the actual owners. We had no idea. Even though I did have an alarm on it, but they did it like fairly fast.
Yeah.
Like,
so what's that since they came in? Like, what's the battle been like? Like, what is?
Are they in the process of evicting you?
Yes, they don't stop. Their process continues on. They'll have their attorneys in court. They'll file for you to be evicted. They don't stop anything because they know that the courts are protecting them. They know the courts are protecting them. Because they have me in an eviction court now. And when I went through the process and everything, I had a judge, I had a part, I had everything. And they adjourned it. And when they adjourned it, it's a whole different courtroom and it's a whole different part. You don't adjourn and switch everything around. So it's somebody they know in the courtroom that will administrate them and help them along this process.
Well, what are they trying to do? Get in front of a different, by doing that, what are they trying to do?
They'll get into a
different judge?
They'll get into a different judge that will render them their relief.
So so right now you're in the middle of an eviction court.
An eviction court. Yep. Yeah, and then we're in the middle of an eviction court. And I'm going through the process and watching it and seeing the changes of it right in front of me.
And these, quote unquote investors or people who are taking these properties are just looking at trying to find people who have, quote unquote partial ownership, or maybe like a relative have died and they're trying to come in and buy partial these properties and then take over the whole thing.
Take over the whole thing. Say, hey, we're the new owners. Listen, on my block, it's me and my neighbor. My neighbor lives about 6 houses from me. Her relative lives in Australia. Do you know that these speculators said that they gave the uncle a certain amount of money for his portion of the property from Australia. She hasn't heard from her uncle in over 20 years.
I was gonna say remember the guy I had mentioned in New York that was placing liens on people's properties and foreclosing. I was gonna say the thing is that they're so brazen about it.
Right.
Like, one of the ways, for instance, let's say you go into a bank and try and pass like fraudulent checks. Like, one of the ways they figure, like, if they're questioning it, then they'll say like, well, I'm not sure. Let me go in the back. We're thinking about calling the police. If that person says, oh, never mind, and leaves, you see what I'm saying? But if they don't, if they say, well, oh, yeah, we don't have to do all that. Here, give me my check back, and they walk out, they know, that helps them know, okay, that was definitely fraud. But if they sit there and say, call the police.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with this check. I don't know what you're thinking. Call, do whatever you got to do. Then a lot of times they'll go, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and cash the check. Mm-hmm. Because if this person was doing something illegal, they wouldn't stay here. So being brazen sometimes works to your advantage. And that's what I think part of it, the being brazen, is that they've got an attorney that is in New York, that's been there forever, that does this on a regular basis. And he continues to file the paperwork. And even though you're screaming, hey, this isn't right, you weren't allowed to do this, we were never notified, my father's not, didn't sign off, this person doesn't have the right to sign off. And they're like, okay, none of that matters. We're going to go forward.
Yep.
And they keep showing up. Then the court and everybody else kind of thinks it must be legit, it must be okay.
Right. She's just upset about the decision and that's how they look at you. They're just upset about the decision that was made. They don't even look at the fraudulent activity that has occurred because they know their jurisdiction. There's no way a conservator could have signed off in a different jurisdiction. They know that.
Well, first of all, they signed off for nothing, right?
Oh yeah, they sold off. They said 1.4 million. So if you're talking about 1.4 million, what about 10 people? How much did my father receive when he's been doing maintenance and taking care of the property and doing everything for this whole time? So what amount did he receive? And it's against the law, even as a conservator, to sell a property for way under its as is. You can't sell it. What court or what judge is going to render you the relief of selling a property as
What's
is?
the property worth?
Yeah, that's all I was going to say.
The property is, my neighbor just sold his house in 2 weeks. It's worth $4.2 million.
Yeah, I mean,
In 2 weeks, my neighbor, and he put a lot of renovation in it, but still, my neighbor, the same exact design,
Even if you knock off $1 million.
Do we know what the portion that he claims he is entitled to? Like, is it 50, 25, or?
My father allegedly in this lawsuit, it was like 50, but my father is actually the whole owner of the property.
Yeah.
He's the actual owner. They don't own anything because the way the title was, it was with survivorship. So my father outlived his relatives. So it's my father's. He owns the whole property.
Okay.
Legally he owns the own property, but these people are saying,
and these guys aren't paying $1.4 million unless it's working with other properties, right?
Exactly.
And have you met or come across anybody that has gone through the whole entire process and been kicked out?
Oh yeah. In our group, I have a lot of people that have lost their property. A lot of people are homeless, live with other relatives. Maybe a lot of people have 3 and 4 brownstones. So maybe they're in one, but in their one, it's the same process that's going on. So they might have lost 2. And they may be in one still. These speculators go in. A lot of them had tenants. We didn't have tenants, so that kind of what saved us, that we didn't have tenants, because the tenants are letting them in, letting them have access to the property. A couple of them, that's what happened to them. They had tenants, and then they told the tenants that they lost their property in foreclosure. We're the new owners, and now pay me. So now this person that's really the actual owner, their income is gone, because now these speculators are coming in and taking their money from them. So, and then how they're going to fight it in a legitimate court battle if they don't have the income to fight it. And so that's why I say an investigation is really what's needed to show.
How long ago was this thing in the neighborhood?
That was, everything was in 2023. It's very recent, not even a year. It's like year to date, because they came into my property the beginning of January. And they came in the beginning of January, and then I think my first court date when I started was like March. I did like a quick TRO. It was like March, and then the judge dismissed it, and then I went back again.
Yeah.
So it was all 2023. Everything happened in 2023.
So
right, 2023. Yeah, 2020. Yeah, it was 2023.
Scrolling through the website. So this was actually the article was posted in 2024. So last year in the summer.
Yep.
With you guys sitting outside the house. So this is the house that you guys stay at?
Yes, that's the house. With the news, with 12 News?
Yeah.
Yes.
I can actually turn it.
That was the rally that we put together. Yep. That was
And like the news came out and everything.
The news wasn't out. She just took the pictures from it.
Yeah.
She wasn't on the scene,
okay.
But you see the Senate, our senator was there. See, that's our city man. And see, at the time, we thought it was the Embalo brothers.
Yeah, but is it? Do you know, or do you just don't know who it is?
No, it's another group. It's called 227.
Okay.
But at the time, we thought, because if you look at the deed, at one time, their name was on our property.
So you think they sold it, or just
they sold it? They
it?
backed out. They were like, we're gonna back out this deal, and then we gave it to our boys.
Okay.
And that's what happened, because I started posting. That's my neighbor right there.
Yeah.
But I started posting and attacking the Embalo brothers, and they called me. They were like, "Listen, it wasn't us. It wasn't us." But they all do the same thing. And if you look at them, they changed their whole website. They're still doing it though.
Yeah.
And I need to go after them too, because they had our property on the contract for 2 years. For like 2 years. Yes. So that was the first rally, and I had the senator there.
Which senator?
Bridgeport, our senator right now. He was at the rally. So I've had contact with all elected officials, because I know you had mentioned that at one time, like if I've got, reached out to them, and I reached out to everyone in it. So that's why I said
Basically useless.
Yes,
Yeah.
basically. I mean, they just can. I guess they can only do what I guess they said they can do, which is stand in front of the house and yell at. But it's out of their. Once again, everything goes back to jurisdiction. It's out of their jurisdiction. We just make the laws. So then you go to them and say, well, this needs to be rendered into the law, and this needs to be rendered into the law. But if they're not following the law, and the last meeting I had with them about 3 weeks ago, it was like, listen, hey, I thank you guys for what you're doing in Albany. I'm not saying no to it, but they're not doing anything. The laws that you have in place, they're not doing anything.
They're not following.
They're not following it. And that's why I said, when you do an investigation and you can show this wasn't done, this wasn't done, this wasn't done, this wasn't done, then we can address the problem. Until it is an investigation to pull back really what is happening and really what happened, they're going to camouflage it and say, oh, we were short-staffed. Oh, they're going to give you every smoke and mirror there is. But an investigation will tell you what happened. It's like redlining, Once they really looked at redlining, it was called what it was called, and that's what we need. We need an internal investigation for all these different agencies to show really what's going on. And then we can hold them accountable because there's the proof to show what was done, what you did, what you didn't do. But if they're officers of the courts, they're going to all work together. It's almost like the police department. You know what I mean? This person, write this document. This is what they said happened. And and that's what holds. That's really what holds until an internal investigation that comes on. Then you can see a lot of discrepancies in what was written, and what was actual factual. And that's what we kind of need. That's what we need. That's the only way I feel like it'll work, is a true investigation.
So how are you feeling personally for this property? Like, do you feel like you're going to win?
Oh yeah, I definitely feel I'm gonna win, even if it goes to like that. It may have to go to the appellate court, the FBI. That's the only way. It has to go to a higher court in order for it to win, because the lower courts, they're working together.
For these people that get kicked out of their properties, why were they kicked out? Like what didn't they do to?
They didn't know. They didn't know the process. They didn't have a group of people maybe standing behind them, speaking on it, telling a story. I think that's. I think that's really what happened. Some of people have documentations and show what happened to them, but who did they present it to show that this is really what's happening? And it was like a single case of a person saying it, versus now it's a group of people that say this same thing has happened to 20 of us, 30 of us, 50 of us, 70 of us. On my social media, everyone has always said, this happened to my grandmother, this happened to my aunt, that kid. Everyone says the same story. So I think now, with us coming together and presenting it, then we can investigate and show really even what their case is, and show really what transpired and really what happened. And, I think that's what's really needed, is to show.
Is there any way for someone to prevent this? Like if they inherit, a house with their family members.
This is a tough one.
Yeah,
I was gonna say this is a tough one, because for part of the process, she knew what was happening. You know what I'm saying?
Couldn't do anything.
It's the problem is, when the court systems don't follow the rules, then there's not much you can do. You're sitting there saying, no, but you don't have the right to do that, and they're like, it's fine, and they record it, and then everybody along the line upholds that ruling. What do you say?
Right.
You look like it's sour grapes. Like you just didn't get the result you wanted, so you're upset. It's not that I didn't get the result I wanted. It's that you don't have the legal right to do what you did. And they go, anyway, and they keep going. And you're like, what? No, not that.
That's exactly what's happening.
That's like some sheriff from Georgia getting a complaint in Georgia, driving down here and arresting me for a complaint in Georgia. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Who are you?
Yeah, you can't come in here and just arrest me because somebody in Georgia said I did something. Like, what are you talking about? You pick me. You have to. There's a process to go through.
And they're doing it, and they're documenting it. They are literally. I mean, to see it in actuality, it's like almost unbelievable. They are literally putting on paper and saying these things that are not rendered, and that's not true.
I wonder if that falls under the constitutional one of the amendments to the Constitution, because
Yes.
now only because I mentioned the criminal aspect of it is that you can't say hey, you committed a crime in Georgia and then Florida indicts you for that crime and then grabs you, even if it's federal, and then grabs you and decides that we're going to put you in a court in Florida, even if it wasn't like even if it wasn't, let's say, a state issue. Let's say it was federal. So I don't know if we have jurisdiction everywhere. You're right, you do. And Matt, you ran a scam in Georgia. Okay, I ran a scam in Georgia. Great. We're going to indict you in Florida for that scam. Well, wait a minute. Is there a connection between here and Florida? No, but we know you did it. And we're gonna indict you here in Florida for the crime you committed in Georgia, and we're going to arrest you and bring you to Florida and put you on trial in a federal courthouse in Florida. Now, I understand it's federal, but the bottom line is the Constitution says I have to be indicted in that jurisdiction where I committed the crime, and I have to be tried in the jurisdiction. And the reason for that is this is why you have different jurisdictions.
Exactly.
Every jurisdiction has a different feel for it. So for instance, in Georgia, you might say, hey, listen, you're doing a drug and we have a real problem with that drug here and we hate it. And we hammer guys that do that here. So we give these guys 30 years. So you were doing it here, you were selling it here, we indicted you here, we tried you here, you're in trouble. Well, here's what happens is, okay, well, if I can get myself moved to another jurisdiction, like if you were that drug dealer, would you want to be tried in Georgia where they're giving these guys 30 years?
Absolutely.
Or would you say,
somewhere was less?
why don't we get it moved to the middle district of Florida where they're giving people 5 years?
Yep, then the max.
So you get yourself moved. But the problem is what typically happens with the government is the government says, you know what? He's selling the drug. So the opposite situation.
They move you to the higher.
Right. They move you to the jurisdiction where they know you're selling it here. You're only going to get 5 years. But if we get this guy moved to Georgia, they'll give him 30. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's why it's the same thing with, it'd be like the death penalty. Yes, we don't have the death penalty. Let's say you have the death penalty in Florida, but you don't have it in, in New York. Then I want to be moved. I want to be tried in New York because if I'm found guilty, I might get life or 20 years, but I won't get
the death.
Right.
Right. It's exactly that, that's exactly what's going on.
So either way, this is something that happened if this is something that happened in New York, then we need to stay in New York. You can't switch jurisdictions. You have to, you have to stay. You have to indict someone, or you have to try someone, or you have to go through the court system in that state. Yep. And the lawyers need to be in that. That's why
lawyers can't go anywhere.
Lawyers can't go. Look, for instance, when I sued up from Deveroli, right? I hired a lawyer out of this. I sued him in Florida.
Okay.
Hired a lawyer in Pennsylvania. I hope it was Pennsylvania. I think it was Pennsylvania. So in Pennsylvania, he was the only one who took my case.
Right.
Can he represent me in Florida? No. He's not licensed in the bar in Florida. So he had to file paperwork with the bar for a limited time to say, will you please let me try this case in Florida without taking the bar in Florida. And so he had to get a waiver and the other side had to agree. I think they had to agree. That's not even true. They didn't, I don't think they had to agree. But the bar had to say, for this limited case, we will allow you to try the case here. And the court signed off on it too. The court also had to say, yeah, that's fine. The laws are very similar, or we believe he'll figure it out. And this was still federal, by the way.
Okay.
These are two federal jurisdictions.
Right.
So they're still federal.
But they're monitoring and they're kind of speaking amongst each other. In order to,
it's federal, but the federal case was filed in Florida. He's a state. Well, he also did federal, but it's still jurisdictional. You still have to get permission. So he had to get permission from the bar and the federal court to represent me in Florida. And they could have said no. I mean, and that the reason you do that is because one, the laws are subtly different, but the procedures are subtly different. And so are for instance, in Oklahoma, they might give out big, they might give out big, wins, like whatever, I forget what you call it. But let's say somebody wins, they might be giving out $20 million. But in Florida, they might be like, yeah, I understand you got burned when you drove through McDonald's for the coffee.
Right.
But we're giving you $2 million.
Right.
Well, in Oklahoma, they would have given us 20. Yeah, but you're not in Oklahoma. In
Right.
Florida, we're more conservative, and we're not just giving out
Money like that.
Money. Right. So that's why it's jurisdictional. You try and stay in your jurisdiction. You can't be moving jurisdiction. You're shopping. They call it shopping jurisdictions.
Exactly, and that's what I was saying in the housing court. Like I said, I went through the process, went through the procedures. I had they already gave me a judge. They gave me the part and everything, and then all of a sudden it was adjourned for a later date with a whole different judge and a whole different part. More than likely, that's what they were doing. They were shopping
the judge.
Shopping the judge.
Right. Yeah, that's why it's sometimes they'll try and get judges to where Your Honor, you used to be in business. You used to be in a firm with this lawyer, and so we want to get you. They'll try get them bumped to get another judge because they're trying to get a more favorable judge.
Yep. And that's against the law. You can't do that, but that's what they're doing. Right in my face, right, like literally in real time, and I'm like, wow, look at this, and an adjournment. Okay.
Yeah, that's
So, like I said, it's to the point where it just really has to be federal. It has to be investigated from a federal level.
The FBI to come in and look at the whole thing.
FBI has to look in that. Yep.
Plus, it terrifies people.
Yeah.
The FBI,
It does.
Terrifies
It does.
people.
It does terrorize them and let them know that you can't hide behind the rock anymore. This is who's doing it, and that's what we want, and this is what we need to show. And this protects everybody. You know what I mean? And purchasing a home is one of our biggest assets. You know what I mean? And if we all purchase homes and we're not protected, it will continue to happen. It has to stop at some point where you protect it.
You might need someone like Tom Simon to come in and write up something and walk it into the FBI headquarters and say, "This is what's going on." Maybe.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes, that's exactly what's needed to stop this.
I don't think he'll do it. I'll call him, but I think he'll be like, "Is it in Florida?"
Well, he could, he knows people. He may say,
He might
"Hey,
know somebody."
You might know somebody.
This is right down his alley too, because he did. He did white collar crimes and financial, and I don't think he knows a lot about title work though, because we've had multiple conversations where he's like, "How does this work? What would be the thing that they would file?" And I'm like, "They file this or this," But he could call me and I could I could explain it. And really, the thing is, it's not hard to figure out anyway. You could pick up the phone and call any title company and talk to the person at the title company, and they'll be like, "No, you can't do that. He has to go. This is the procedure he needs to go through to do this." Okay, but this is what the judge did, and they'll be like, "Yeah, that they can't do that." Like you, but you'd probably be better to get a retired FBI agent that would lay it out for the FBI to put it in somebody's lap and have them look through it and be like, "Okay, I get it. Let me look into it."
Exactly.
And then 6 months later, or 18 months later, they'll start looking
at it. But like you said, with the title company, when I went to court, that's when I realized, in one of my court cases, I realized, the attorney came to me, he's like, "How can we settle this situation?" And I was like, "Go away. This is how we can settle the situation." And I don't know what happened. I may have picked up the phone. He gave me his number. They seem pretty nice. "Hey, here's my number. Call me if anything has changed." Well, I don't know what happened during the time we were waiting to go to court. I called him, and when I called him, he was like, "I do so many cases. Who are you again?" He's like, "Oh, when I went to court, I was there for the title company." And I was like, "The title company? I thought you was representing the LLC, not the title company." So then that's when I start realizing, once again, they're all connected. The title companies in New York and these Shell LLC are all the same people. So, because a title company who signed off on all these people names on the property with no proof to say who's the owner.
Hey, you guys, I appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. Also, we're going to leave all the links in the description, which is it all the links or just Instagram? The Instagram link in the description. You can click on that, go there, follow, and to keep abreast of how things progress. Once again, I really appreciate you guys watching. Please consider joining our Patreon. It's $10 a month. It really does help Colby and I make these videos. And share the video and like it. And thank you very much. See ya.